Hi, happy you're here. Get comfy and let's get started. Sit at My Grave, Season 2, Chapter 8. Ardyn began getting ready for the day, his body on autopilot as his brain was still racing. It was difficult to focus on his own goals right then. He still couldn't help but think about other things going on, stuff he should be a part of. Gallon was leaving soon? He still hadn't gotten around to checking on Reed's band and his girlfriend. Would it be awkward to visit her? Invite her over? Should he just leave it how it was? That's not taking responsibility, though, is it? Ardyn thought, leaning his head back as he rinsed his hair. His mind also drifted to his mother. He knew they weren't poor, but now losing the money from Easton and being swamped with all those bills, they weren't in a good standing at all. Furnace check could only do so much for them. Those were things Ardyn never really found himself thinking about before. He was never worried about those things growing up, and to suddenly have it breathing down his neck made him uncomfortable. Maybe if he called his father. Ardyn had heavily contemplated talking to Easton. Sure, Ridley and him were done, but did it mean he had to shut him out completely too? Should he? Regardless of anything else, Easton could help with the bills at least, couldn't he? But Ridley had made it clear she didn't want that. Ardyn now stood in front of the mirror looking at himself shirtless. He flinched as his hand ran over his bruised skin. His stomach had a purple hue to it thanks to Ted's punches there. But that wasn't the only thing he noticed. On his chest, he saw a faded mark there as well. He hadn't remembered getting hit there, but figured it wasn't all that important. Regardless, he wasn't worried about how any of it looked. It was how it made him feel. It was painful to apply pressure there, so laying on it was awful. And what it represented hurt him even more. The fact that he just laid there while someone badmouthed him and his brother, forced him to apologize, someone as brain dead as Ted. Ardyn tried to calm himself down and just focused on getting dressed. He had so many more important things to focus on. He had a date with the graveyard tonight, he hoped. Ardyn spent most of his day trying to write down the events so far. Besides the blunt side, he also wrote down some of his own thoughts about it all. And although normally he would think of this to be unnecessary, especially with doing such delicate work, he'd in addition began writing down things he'd like to tell Reed once he saw him again. Questions he'd like to ask him. Hi there, sweetie. Just taking a break here. It's nice to sit in and just enjoy nature. Watching everything go into its natural routine calms me down, Verna said. Ardyn had came outside. It was later in the day now, and a little after lunchtime. He saw his grandmother sitting on her porch, with her little sun hat off now. She was massaging her sore hands while she sat there and looked off across her yard. Didn't quite get it done, but that's okay. I did great for today. It's better now than when I started, Verna commented, looking at her flower garden with pride. Ardyn stood by her, staring out the yard as well. The sun hurt his eyes, making him squint them slightly. Are you headed back in now? Ardyn questioned. Oh yes, I'm gonna go to the supermarket for ingredients and then get dinner started. But first, I'm going to relax. Verna yawned, leaning back in her chair. Ardyn glanced at her, then looked back away, frowning. Reed, bless his soul. But him and your mom used to come visit sometimes. He would try to help weed the garden too, Verna mentioned. But I gotta do it by myself now, she said. Ardyn stayed silent for a moment. Should he offer to help? He was trying to do everything at once, but felt at the end of the day he was doing nothing at all. Well, I guess I'll go get started. Be safe, sweetie, Verna said, groaning a bit as she got out of her chair. She kissed Ardyn on the cheek and fled back into the house. Ardyn sighed. He walked off the porch looking down to the garden. It would kill some time until nightfall, and at least he'd be doing something, Ardyn figured. He pushed up his sleeves and began getting his hands dirty. Finally, as the sun began to set, Ardyn knew it was almost time for him to leave. He cut his weeding short and was in the house for the remainder of his waiting time. After Verna drove off and he was alone at the house, he couldn't help but feel the pressure of anxiety rising in his chest. It caused him to look over his shoulder several times. Was he just thinking too much, or was he being beckoned to head out? Either way, there was no avoiding it. Ardyn sent a text to his mother, letting her know he'd be home for dinner, and left out. He was getting sick of having to walk to his destinations, but taking the metro trains would cost him a great amount, It seemed too unnecessary for that distance. Ardyn started thinking of getting a job while he walked on the side of the road. It would help him with getting to where he needed to go at least. But what would he even do for work? The thought only crossed his mind once before when he was originally out at the cemetery. He was out of school and really had no idea what he should do. Surely that wasn't important right then, though. The discovery he made here was more urgent than anything else at the moment. Before he knew it, Ardyn made it to the cemetery. Amidst some of the dirty looks he got on the way there, he kept his eyes focused on his goal. Dirt and rock crunched under his shoes as the speed decreased once he made it to those familiar arches. The sun was barely peeking out by the time he made it there. Ardyn breathed out a shudder. The weather was getting colder now, especially at night. Ardyn paused where he was and rubbed his hands together for warmth. Being back in this place just flooded him with bad memories, feeling so helpless and upset. He tried to avoid it, but it was difficult. He slowly walked his way in there, his nerves tense as he became aware of every little thing that moved, constantly switching his head to either side and stopping to try and figure out what else could be out here with him. Without the adrenaline of everything freshly happening, Ardyn found it hard to push himself further into that place. He might have messed up once, but he shouldn't be afraid. He's spoken to a spirit. It's working for him. He tried to remind himself of that. This is what he loved, what he studied, but still, as he walked deeper into that graveyard, he felt his hair stand up with goosebumps. Ardyn. He heard his name being whispered. He froze, just inches from Reed's gravesite. His blood ran cold, and the hold on his backpack straps tightened. I'm here to get answers, Ardyn reminded himself. He shouldn't be afraid. He was back in control, he repeated. Are you ready? He heard the question on the wind. It made him curious. If anyone else was here, would they be able to hear it too? Or was it trapped in his own head? It had taken such difficulty to speak to the other side beforehand. Ardyn questioned, why so easy now? Was it due to the deal he made? Were they listening to him? Was he the one who gave them access? How much could they hear? What did they see when he wasn't aware?